Tennessee and Kentucky in the Sweet 16. Going to be interesting. Rivalry coming up in Indy this weekend.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Eric Cain with Locked On Vols. He is Lance Dawe with Locked On Kentucky. This is a Locked On crossover, Tennessee and Kentucky, coming up this weekend, Friday, in the Sweet 16. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to go through the matchups, key matchups, previous two games. Of course, Kentucky won both of those in the regular season. We'll talk a little football at the end in segment 3. It's going to be a fun show here. Lance, first and foremost, isn't it weird? I mean, it's Tennessee and Kentucky, not in Thompson Bowling at Food City Center, not in Rupp. It's Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indy in the Sweet 16. These two teams have played over 200 times in program in the series history. Not one time have they met in the postseason. In fact, this will be Tennessee's first postseason appearance against a team from the SEC, which I find that hard to believe as well. Any way you want to spin it, it's rare, but it should be a good game in Indianapolis on Friday night.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest stages you could have possibly asked for such a big college basketball rivalry, one that's been extremely heated over the last several years, and one that I think is going to kind of have a new spark to it, I guess, now with Mark Pope at the helm winning his first two games against the Vols. And everybody and their mother on the internet has told me it's near impossible to win 3 straight games against an opponent. And then Kentucky ran into Alabama for a third time in the SEC tournament, and we saw how that turned out. So
I was going to let you know that as well. So
I appreciate it. Maybe we could just end the show there. Like, Kentucky can't beat a team 3 times. Tennessee's going to win by 90. Book it.
Full curtains. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, but this one feels like it's got a little bit of an extra spark to it. And I'm super excited about that because throughout the course of this season, I've kind of been snake bitten, by the past several years with Cal, where you walk into a matchup, you look at it on paper, and you say, yeah, okay, we should win this game, and then they find a way to lose it. And here you are now, where Kentucky has miraculously won. It feels like 2 games in the Sweet 16, where it felt like they were kind of on their last breath there. It felt like with all the injuries and everything, but here we are now, and this Tennessee game, I'm not uber confident heading into it, but I feel better than I have in most big time matchups so far this season.
And again, there's no reason not to, right? Just because Tennessee's lost 2 games this season to Kentucky doesn't mean Tennessee can't beat Kentucky. But if I'm a Kentucky fan right now, it's like, okay, I've beaten this team twice. Like, I mean, certainly know it's not going to be easy, but like, you've seen it twice. You've seen it under a couple of different circumstances as well, with Kentucky being shorthanded. Before we move on, though, I do want to ask you this real quick. How sick are you that Cal's in the Sweet 16?
I personally, I don't know if my listeners are going to really like this, but I'm happy for his kind of change of scenery. I'm happy that he found it again. It being the ability to win in the postseason. Yeah. It's just one question: where the crap was it for the past half decade? Where was that fire? Where was that energy? And where you've had objectively, I think, 3 teams that were infinitely better than this year's Arkansas team, and you found a way to blow it. Albeit, some heroic performances, some things that you just simply don't see every day with Golke and with St. Peter's. And again, on paper, those were games that Kentucky should have won. He found a way to lose them. Whereas with teams like, honestly, St. John's, I think it's the best 2 seed they could have possibly gotten in the round of 32. I mean, I was about to say, St. John's is a game that they should have lost. But when you think about it, uber athletic and all that. But anyway, back to what you were saying about Cal. I'm happy that he found it again. Sucks that it wasn't with Kentucky over the last 5 years, but I think both parties needed to kind of split. And you know what? Good for him. As long as we don't run into him in the national championship, cool.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky obviously in the Sweet 16 after a very kind of roller coaster like regular season. So I mean, that's a great year in itself with Mark Pope, and of course a big Sweet 16 game coming up here on Friday against Tennessee. So far in the NCAA tournament, Tennessee squared off against the 15th seeded Wofford. And it was Chaz Lanier, man. Chaz Lanier's first ever, NCAA tournament game. I was going to say he was one and done. He had never won a postseason game ever. 4 years in the Atlantic Sun. He just, went one and done in the conference tournament. And until they beat Texas in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament, Chaz Lanier never even won a game past the regular season, but 29 points. Only 2 players, one of them being Dalton Connect, had scored more points in a Tennessee win in postseason history. So, I mean, that was the Chaz Lanier show there in game 1. And then game 2, he became Tennessee's single-season all-time three-point shooting leader, passing Chris Lofton again. It's Chaz Lanier 1 with like 116 threes in a season. Then it's Chris Lofton on the list there. But those are kind of the stories. I mean, Tennessee just absolutely annihilated UCLA in the second half. The final score, 67-58. I don't know if you watched it. I mean, that doesn't know justice. Tennessee beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
And went to a 1-2-2 trap there at the end of the first half and allowed Tennessee to go on an 8-0 run in that half and then just kind of stormed away. So it's been 2 games that Tennessee handled physically, I wouldn't say from the get-go, but pretty much almost the entirety of the 40 minutes, at least 30 minutes, and, kind of cruising on into the Sweet 16, but knowing that it's going to be a challenge. Tell me about Kentucky's pass so far against Troy and, of course, against Illinois.
Well, I do want to say this about Lanier first real quick. And if I'm not mistaken, in both contests against Kentucky, I don't know what his point total was at the end of the game, but he struggled efficiency-wise. And, Kentucky fans haven't seen, what Chaz Lanier is capable of, at least not at this level. But this was a guy that Kentucky wanted badly. In the offseason, he ends up going to the Vols. And look, if you're gonna try and find a way to win this one, if you're Tennessee, you got to have your best player playing hot, and that's what he's doing right now. So I think Kentucky fans need to be absolutely aware of that. It's like, hey, this is a guy that you didn't see pop off in the first 2 games. Very much so could. In fact, I would actually expect it in this matchup. Yeah. But as far as Kentucky goes, this Troy team that they faced off against in the Sun Belt, I didn't say it publicly, but watching them and looking at them on paper, it was like, if Kentucky does not win this game in convincing fashion, there's something has gone horribly wrong. Because as good as they were coming out of the Sun Belt, I mean, physically they were just nothing compared to what Kentucky had to offer. And look, that's a great defense. Scott Cross is a great coach for the Trojans, but they couldn't keep up. They just simply could not keep up. Kentucky kept hammering the ball inside. Otega Oweh was incredible, 20 points, super efficient. And you saw Kentucky just kind of take over that one in the second half after having a little bit of run there in the first. And you see that Illinois game heading into it. I was really worried about the 3-point shooting. Illinois, one of the most volatile teams in the entire country. Up, down, up, down, up, down. They got super hot in their first game against the 11 seed Xavier. And, I had so many people tell me, all right, this is where they get cold. And I didn't believe it. And then you watched it and it was like they went ice cold from 3. It just simply was not enough. I think maybe in another reality, they find a way to win that game. But Kentucky, I think, executed on the offensive end set-wise about as well as I have seen them execute this entire season. I mean, it was incredible. You were adding new wrinkles. You were adding more Peja stuff outside of your normal zoom action. You saw Kentucky's 5 men who operate the offense so much, making really good passes, sound decisions. Kobe Brea and Lamont Butler, everything they seem so patient despite playing with such a high pace. And that's eventually what got it done in the second half against the Fighting Illini, is that Kentucky just took over in those first few minutes. Kobe Brea went on a spurt where he hit 4 shots in a row, and it wasn't all she wrote, obviously, with the Illinois' ability to score, but they just kind of held them at arm's length the entirety of the matchup. And so heading into this one, I would say both teams are playing extremely high-level basketball. It's a fun little note here, Eric, actually, about this Kentucky team. I know we'll get into specifics with matchups and stuff, but I wanted to mention this here as early as possible. Kentucky gave up 98 points to Ole Miss on February 4th, I believe. They were 112th in adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom after they played that game. They're 45th right now.
Wow.
They have completely turned things around. Mark Pope apparently cut his hand wide open on a chair in Oxford at halftime, just angry at the performance. You could see it in the post game. And since that point, chairs were broken and defense was had since that point. And so, both these teams, I think, firing on all cylinders. Man, this is shaping up to be a really good game in Indy. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it should be just great theater. And the storylines are just all over the place. We'll get into some of those storylines coming up. What are some of the keys? I mean, this is how Tennessee and Kentucky got here. What's it going to take for Tennessee or Kentucky to advance on to the Elite Eight? For Tennessee, it would be the 3rd ever Elite Eight. For Kentucky, I am willing to bet more than just 3 Elite Eights. But we'll talk more on that as we continue on with this crossover. Locked On Vols and Locked On Kentucky. Get the supplies that you need from the site that made the skills for trades at a Supply House. Whether you're in the plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need to deliver fast and from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and an industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for that extra edge, the free Trade Masters program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies in just a few clicks. Plus, use that promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's all at supplyhouse.com. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Kentucky. Tennessee and Kentucky in the Sweet 16 coming up Friday night, 7:39. A little crossover edition here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Lance, so we kind of talked about how these two teams got here. Tennessee, despite losing the two matchups in the regular season, Tennessee is a 4.5-point favorite, courtesy of our friends over there at FanDuel Sportsbook. What does Kentucky need to do to win this game?
I think they have to find a way to keep the three-point shooting hot like they did in the first two contests. You don't just go and easily beat this Tennessee team. You have to have something go wrong, I think, defensively for the Vols. And that's kind of what Tennessee ended up doing in those first two games is, look, Tennessee, third best team in the nation in three-point defense. But you look at the way that they kind of play on that side of the ball. Opponents get 34.6% of their points from beyond the arc. That's 3% above the national average. You go and actually watch it. Tennessee will let some teams take some threes. They don't hit. They get out and they contest well. But they do let you they force you into some bad shots from beyond the arc. And against Kentucky, I think they were, again, you talk about what they were against Illinois, same thing against the Vols. I think, especially in that trip to Knoxville, super patient with their shot selection, inside out stuff, type of thing you see from Alabama more often than not, right? With them driving in, kicking out. Kentucky made some really good passes inside out to a variety of guys. So if you're Kentucky, you're going into this one saying, okay, even if they try and take that away from us, if they try and take away those outside shots, we have to remain patient with the flow of the game, and we have to find a way to hit those outside shots. On the other hand, you saw 45 threes in that game in Knoxville, 45, and it was a lot of bad shot selection, Eric. It was forcing the issue, I think, at a variety of points in that game where Tennessee could have settled down and gotten a lead and found a way to win in the second half. But I think they rushed some things. If you're Kentucky, you have to find a way to either eliminate that or pack it in and say, okay, we dare you in this environment, in a football stadium, in this weird. I was actually talking to Gordon Hayward actually earlier today about him playing in places like that. He's like, yeah, it's super weird. It's like playing in a park, makes you super uncomfortable shooting. Maybe you just dare Tennessee to do it. One way or another, I think three-point shooting is going to decide this, and Kentucky has to execute on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, you better get used to shooting because you need some shots to fall in order to win this game. You brought up three-point. That's exactly where I was going to go with it. I mean, it's not like Tennessee was shook. It's not like Tennessee was scared. It's just Tennessee wasn't Tennessee in these two matchups. And I mean, that one, I believe it was in Knoxville, the one I'm referencing. 44, 45 three-point shot attempts. I mean, that is not Tennessee. I mean, sure, Tennessee will take some bad shots every now and again. Okay, Tennessee will take shots and they won't hit. Okay, that's basketball. 45 three-pointers, that is not Tennessee. I mean, that is, I don't know who that team is. And on the flip side, again, it's, sure, Kentucky shoots, Kentucky scores, and Kentucky, has a high point total. That's just kind of who Kentucky is. But I mean, you said it yourself, Tennessee right now, third best perimeter defense? I mean, I think entering postseason, Tennessee was the best three-point shooting defense in the country. Entering that game, Tennessee was the best three-point shooting defense, and Kentucky just couldn't miss. It's like Tennessee just wasn't themselves. And who are you? You're a team that is defensive first, nitty-gritty, get lost in the game defensively, find your rhythm offensively, and go. Chaz Lanier, it helps when you're on, and it helps when you're going. And as you said earlier, your best player, it's the stage, right? I mean, go out there and play, and that's what Zakai Zeigler needs to do. Jordan Gainey's got to be a big factor for Tennessee. Zakai Zeigler, of course, has got to be doing what he does on the defensive end. assisting and of course not turning the basketball over. And I think one of the X factors, as always, is a guy like Igor Milicic for Tennessee.
Yes.
Not necessarily from the point total, but he has got to rebound. If he does not rebound, it is a long night for Tennessee. So the 3-point storyline in this game: Kentucky hitting them, Tennessee defending them, Tennessee not taking as many. Again, I don't know who that team was that played Kentucky in that regard. So that's kind of one of the big storylines for me in this one.
I think also something that we have to ask, you're talking about Igor, you're talking about, rebounding. What do we see physically inside? And I don't know what officiating crew we're going to get for this one, but if they're not if they've not consistently seen SEC ball or Kentucky or Tennessee, do we see this thing officiated dramatically different than the first two, where you see a lot of hand check stuff, you see a lot of things called? I saw you tweeting on it on the timeline just a couple of days ago about, just how bad some different calls were. I have gone mad complaining about it on my show for a couple different games this season in the SEC, where it just feels like, it's not consistent. College basketball officiating has been, I think this is the worst I've seen it in my life. And I'm curious to see with guys like Milicic, Okpara, Amari Williams, and Brandon Garrison, what does the game look like inside? Because as much as we talk about how important 3-point shooting is going to be, look, if the shots aren't falling, you have to ask the question, how quickly are you able to get the ball inside with guys like Zeigler or Gainey? If you're looking at Kentucky, Ken Otega-Owe, who has been just a get downhill and get out of his way type guy, is he going to be able to either finish or get calls? What is this going to look like? I think that's a major talking point, and we're not going to know until we see it.
Yeah, I mean, Rick Barnes kind of said it the other night. It's like, just like a team, the officials, you kind of know the style they're going to call, but you truly don't know it until you get out there and you kind of settle in. And,
right.
The other night, Tennessee, UCLA, I mean, we thought it was going to be, the game didn't tip until 9:53 Eastern, by the way. And then the rate they were calling fouls in the first half, it's like, good Lord, man, we're going to be out here until dawn. They called so many fouls. Jemai Mashak, another in-your-face defender, defensive player of the year candidate, along with Zakai Zeigler, two finalists. I mean, he picked up 2 early fouls, and Felix Okpara had an early foul, a couple of different guys. And then in the second half, it's like they didn't call a thing. It was strange. It was very inconsistent. It's like, okay, what was a foul in the first half both ways is now not a foul here. So I'll be intrigued to kind of see what that is, to your point. Injury situation. Lamont Butler obviously has been dealing with the shoulder and a couple of different guys. What's the health status for the Kentucky Wildcats? Tennessee, it's the same guy's been out all year, J.P. Estrella. They're right. Everybody's banged and bruised, but Tennessee's pretty healthy.
Yeah, I think in the words, I'm going to quote Mark Pope here, it's being held together by duct tape right now. Lamont Butler specifically, his shoulder, I don't know how healthy he is. He's healthy enough to play with a brace, but he is holding on for dear life right now. I don't know if you saw it. Rick Pitino earlier tweeted out about how 2 of his guys are about to immediately get surgery. I think one, both on their hands, either that or one of them had an ACL, something that they were going to immediately get surgery on. It's like they were playing fully injured. I'm really intrigued when Kentucky's season ends, if it does end Friday or if it ends later on, how many guys immediately go to get things fixed. And I think Butler will be at the top of that list.
You see it every year in football, right? Tennessee's in spring practice right now. There's 10 guys that aren't practicing because you have cleanup surgeries every year. So it feels like it's a little bit more evident in basketball because rotations are smaller. There's no pads. You're trying to shoot something through a hoop so you can notice if something's wrong.
And when you look at somebody like Amari Williams, something that Kentucky fans have been really complaining about on Twitter is the fact that he doesn't dunk the ball more consistently. And he's been, instead of going to dunk the ball in these tournament games, he's been laying it up and missing so many shots at the rim. And people are just irate saying dunk the ball. Turns out he's got some pretty serious back problems right now, and he can't get up. And it's a struggle for him to do so. So our starting 5 is kind of struggling with some stuff. Lamont Butler is obviously, I think, banged up, but look, they're fighting like their life depends on it right now in these couple of games. I expect nothing less than that this Friday against Tennessee. But the reality is everybody's banged up. Kirk Carissa, Jackson Robinson out for the season. We know that. You're not going to have Jax who played very well in Knoxville. So how do you change that, or how do you kind of recoup from that? Well, Colin Chandler's been great off the bench. Kobe Bray has kind of filled in that role. But as far as injuries go, Kentucky is what they are, or they are what they are right now, and it's just going to be a matter of can they stay healthy the full 40 minutes while also trying to find a way to win, which is going to be tough. It's going to be physical.
Yep, going to be a physical game. One of those guys that's kind of going through it for Kentucky right now on the injury front, but just continuing to play well. Lamont Butler. He had some comments post-game after the round of 32 win for the Wildcats. I want to ask Lance about this, and is there any reason to worry if you're a Kentucky fan? That's coming up next right here on a crossover, Locked On Vols and Locked On Kentucky. Hey guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at Money Monarch. Have you ever looked at your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? I know I have. I'm sure you have as well. Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. That sounds pretty official, right? You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So you don't just stop managing your money. You're starting to build wealth. I mean, that's important right there. All in one convenience, right? Instead of juggling accounts, multiple accounts, you can choose Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without any stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, one more time, that is monarchmoney.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year, 50% off your first year at Monarch Money.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Locked On Vols meets Locked On Kentucky, a Sweet 16 matchup awaiting in Indy, 7:39 Friday night. Again, it's Tennessee and Kentucky, round 3 here of this 2024-2025 basketball season. Tennessee's third straight Sweet 16, looking to advance on to its third Elite 8 in program history. Any idea how many Elite 8s Kentucky's made?
I want to say it's either 32 or 34, if I'm not mistaken. I saw something recently where they were like 34-11 in Sweet 16 games, if I'm not mistaken.
That's asinine.
Which is just, here's the thing, Eric.
I'm looking it up because I want to make sure that's right. That's incredible.
If I'm horribly wrong, whoops, my bad. But is it better?
So, I mean, they don't have they just have all the years, and it's like 5 columns. 30-something looks right.
Good night. Here's the thing. I want to make this very clear for both my listeners and for your listeners. I started Locked On Kentucky in 2021. If that kind of gives you an idea as to what I've kind of watched as far as postseason basketball, I've not seen an Elite 8 personally.
So you're the problem.
Exactly. I think that's it. I think I just need to go ahead and quit Locked On Kentucky, and maybe they'll find some success. Maybe that's what hey, if Kentucky wins a title after I quit here in about 30 minutes, everybody knows what's going on. I'll come back to Locked On Kentucky, and then we'll be cursed forever. But no, I think that, the success has been awesome history-wise, but I am dying to see Kentucky make it a little further in the tournament.
Well, Tennessee fans, hope you stay here at the job because, of course, Tennessee fans don't want anything for Kentucky, anything nice. And I got to agree with them the majority of the time. Okay, hey, Lamont Butler, man. And again, context is key. And I said this on the show yesterday, but you're in my industry. It's a headline. We got to roll with it, right? I provided context. But he had a really good quote talking about the league prepares you. The league, week in and week out, you play good teams. You're getting prepared to face another good team, another conference team in the Sweet 16, and yada, 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 talk. It was a good quote. But at the end, he says, and we're going to win that game. Boy, for a team like Tennessee that just clings to any bulletin board material, they remember the way Florida celebrated after beating them in early January, and then Tennessee a couple weeks later down like 2 or 3 players, beats them by 20 inside Thompson-Boling Arena. For a team that just clings to anything like that, I just feel like it's fun for people like us. Probably not the smartest thing for Butler, who's a phenomenal player, to say, but it just kind of adds a little bit of flair to this weekend, right?
Yeah, look, if you're looking to both preserve your body and a possible win, I don't think that's the smartest thing for Lamont Butler to possibly say. Of course, you have to look at the quote entirely in its context. But let me tell you what Tennessee's fans and their players are not doing. Looking at that, and frankly, I don't blame them. This is a situation here with Kentucky where if you lose this game, If you lose this game to Tennessee, you are never going to hear the end of it. Right? Like the reality is Kentucky, miles ahead of their football program when it comes to success and prestige. You're not, you don't have squat on the Vols when it comes to what's going on the football field. This is your realm. If you find a way to screw it up here in the biggest stage, might be one of the biggest games in the history of this rivalry, I might quit because of that. This could not be a bigger deal. I don't think. I don't think we're talking about just how significant this could end up being historically for the history of this rivalry moving forward. This is a massive, massive deal. And look, Butler, I love his confidence. The kid's been there before, right? He got him to the title game, right? He got San Diego State all the way. He found a way to be a major contributor, but man, if you're trying to stay healthy, I'm curious to see how Tennessee handles him physically on Friday. That's I think it's going to be a space to watch for sure.
I think so too. And again, like Tennessee's so veteran led, and the style they play defensively. Again, I mentioned 2 National Defensive Player of the Year nominees, and Jamon Mashack's just going to body him up at one point. Zeigler's going to run into. I mean, Tennessee's going to be physical now. A couple years ago when Tennessee had Uros Plavsic at points in times, man, it was just like...
Don't mention his name on the show. I'm sorry.
At points in times, it was like, okay, you need that.
Yeah.
Majority
absolutely.
of the time, it's like, dude, stop. That's not what Tennessee does, but Tennessee is so physical, and I think that's obviously got to be a calling card in this one. And to your point about this rivalry and how this might be one of the biggest matchups ever in this rivalry, for anybody to have such success, if you want to call it that, against Coach Cal, I mean, I think Rick Barnes had it, man. Rick Barnes had a lot of wins in this rivalry while he's been at Tennessee the last 9 years going up against Coach Cal. And, of course, he's gone to Arkansas right now. So far, 0-2 against Mark Pope, but third time's a charm. Tennessee, 4.5-point favorites over at FanDuel. Where are you leaning right now? Obviously, I would assume you're going to take Kentucky.
I think the line makes sense. I mean, look at the metrics. Look, just reality check for Kentucky fans. Tennessee, I think, as far as just overall product, has played way more consistently than the Cats have. Now, talk about injuries and all the different factors that kind of play into it. Sure, but at the end of the day, I think the Vols, they earned that 2 seed for a reason. Kentucky's a 3 seed for a reason. They both had different things fall different ways, and I think there's a reason why Tennessee is 10 spots higher on KenPom. Right? It's because of the inability to be consistent on the defensive end. But as I said earlier, talking with Hayward and Isaac Shade and Andy Patton, you've won this matchup twice. This exact same matchup twice. Tennessee's going to have to throw some major wrinkles into their game plan, or they're going to have to hit the outside shot. If one of those two things or both are going to happen in order for Tennessee to find a way to win this game.
Or, just defend it, right?
Or just, put your hand up, defend an outside shot. Kentucky is playing, if they had lost Butler, if they were playing cold, if they had gotten bailed out in the Illinois game and something horrible had gone wrong, I'd be leaning, in Tennessee's direction. But man, I know what people say about how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in a row. And it's true. It's absolutely true, despite what happened with Alabama earlier this season. Alabama's a different breed when it comes to Kentucky, but it's matchup. That was a matchup problem for Kentucky. And I think that's what's happening here with the Vols. So I'm going to take Kentucky. I understand if somebody would take Tennessee. FanDuel, I understand why they would have the Vols favored. I would not be shocked if Tennessee won this game by 25 on Friday. If everything Kentucky had left in the tank, they poured out and they lit it on fire in a court in Milwaukee here over the weekend. Wouldn't be shocked if that was it. Incredible season for Mark Pope. Hey, we're like one step away from building a statue for this man based on what happened in this first season. But give me the Cats to find a way, man. I'm not going to point to anything specific. Just find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, expert analysis here. I mean, I'm going to take Tennessee for that very reason. This team is too veteran led. This team is so good to fall in this matchup a third time this year. Again, Tennessee does things so well. Tennessee is one of the best defensive teams in the country, the best defensive team in the country for the majority of the season. Tennessee defends the 3 ball better than pretty much anybody in the country consistently. It didn't work out the first 2 matchups, but is it going to really not work out a third time? I can't believe that. And I understand it. Like, if Kentucky wins this game, it's like, okay, well, Kentucky already won this matchup twice. Like, I get it, but I just think Tennessee finds a way, to your point, and Chaz Lanier's playing out of his mind right now, and you got to love it. And you mentioned that, he picked Tennessee over Kentucky, picked Tennessee over BYU as well. Those were kind of the final three left standing, and he came to Tennessee. Really, you could pick Tennessee or Kentucky for this matter, but he came to Tennessee to play in the postseason, to get ready, try to get drafted. Came to Tennessee to play in these types of games. I think Chaz Lanier is going to step up as he's continued to do already in the first two games, and I think he's going to have a day for the Volunteers in Indianapolis. Give me Tennessee. Give me Tennessee to – it's so hard to play this with basketball because the end of the games can be wild. Give me Tennessee to win but not cover. I think it's going to be so close, and it's going to be a really, really fun game. Lance, can't wait, man. We got Tennessee and Kentucky coming up on Friday. What do you got coming up the rest on the show on Locked On Wildcat, Locked On Kentucky this week in preparation for this game?
Man, we're going to talk about the Vols. We're going to talk about Kentucky, the storylines. Reality for Kentucky fans this year, 11 losses or not, maybe 12 on Friday. This has been a hell of a job by Mark Pope this season with what he's been able to do, constructing a roster from scratch and fighting all these different injuries as well. I'm going to talk that. I'm also going to talk portal. Of course, that's kind of been the big topic here on the show as of late outside of NCAA tournament stuff. Some big time names Kentucky has already reached out to. They've scheduled some Zoom meetings with some good kids. There's a guard out of UNLV, Thomas, who I have yet to do a bunch of research on, but Ken Palm comps him to Kimball Walker. So we're going to keep some eyes on that. But yeah, it's going to be portal. It's going to be tournament. I'm super, super excited to dive into all of it.
I keep seeing like these tweets about like portal this, portal that. And I'm just like, this is like tournament. It's like last year the baseball, allow me. I covered Tennessee baseball. It's like we're in Omaha covering the College World Series. It's like, what about the portal? It's like, who cares? It's like this College World Series right here. But no, that's something I should probably do. So we'll dive into the portal talk a little bit as the week goes on, but more and more Tennessee and Kentucky matchup as we get set for Friday night. He is Lance Dawe, host of Locked On Kentucky. I am Eric Cain, host of Locked On Vols. We'll see who wins round 3. Tennessee and Kentucky coming up in the Sweet 16.